If you touch my ears again, human, I'll bite you, she hissed, tail bristling. Rhett leaned closer, grinned lazy. Then I guess I'll have to risk the bite. Stay tuned for more human and alien stories filled with heart, humor, and hope. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Rain drifted against the wide pane of their apartment window, a steady shimmer of city light breaking across the glass. Inside, the air smelled faintly of instant noodles and engine oil. Two things Rhett swore he'd live on forever. Across the cluttered couch sat Sarah, his vulpine roommate, small frame curled into a blanket fortress, red fur at her ears twitching as she pretended not to watch him. She'd come from some distant colony world where foxfolk were common. But here in the heart of human space, she always hid, hood up, voice small, eyes darting away from stares that weren't even there. He liked her maybe too much, especially the way she tried and failed to suppress that nervous tail flick whenever he teased her. And tonight, she looked particularly adorable, glaring at his reflection in the dark window as if she could intimidate him through glass. "Stop smirking," she muttered. "I'm not smirking," Brett lied, utterly smirking. Rhett had gotten used to the rhythm of their mismatched coexistence. 2 months of shared rent, shared mess, shared meals, and an unspoken agreement that neither would admit how weird it was to live with someone so different. He was human to the core, sarcastic, relaxed, quick with a grin. She was a vulpine, small, delicate, with russet fur along her ears and the faintest pattern tracing her cheeks when she blushed. He'd never known someone who could turn red through fur before. It fascinated him far more than he'd ever admit aloud. She sat at the kitchen counter now, ears folded low, pretending to scroll through her datapad. Her tail flicked once, twice, then coiled around her ankles like a nervous metronome. Rhett leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "You realize your ears move when you lie, right?" Her head snapped up. "Well, what?" He pointed, smirk barely contained. "They twitch. Every time you pretend to be reading something, or when I catch you staring at me from the couch." Her fur fluffed out. "I do not stare at you." He shrugged. "Guess my reflection in your eyes must be coincidence." Then her datapad clattered against the counter as she flustered herself into silence. "You're impossible." He grinned, fishing 2 mugs from the drying rack. "And yet here you are still living with me." She muttered something in her native language, a soft, chittering tone like the rustle of leaves. He didn't know what it meant, but the ears flattening gave him a clue. He poured tea for both of them, sliding one across. "You know, you could try talking back in English. You're getting better at it. I don't want to sound stupid." "Too late. I've already heard you order coffee before sunrise." Sarah's lips tightened, but then despite herself, she laughed. A quiet, breathy sound that carried more warmth than anything else in the room. That laugh was why he didn't mind the teasing, why he kept pushing just a little every day. Later that night, Red sat sprawled on the couch, one arm behind his head, watching the news flicker across the hollow screen. Sarah perched at the far end, a bowl of instant noodles balanced precariously on her knees. Her hood was up again, hiding everything but the twitching tip of one ear. "You know," Brett began, "for someone who claims to hate human staring, you do a lot of things that make you easy to stare at." She blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Means you're cute, Sarah." Her tail thumped against the couch once in startled protests. "You always say things like that." He shrugged, smiling into his cup. "Yeah, because they're true." She huffed, noodles halfway to her mouth, clearly unsure if he was teasing or not. He didn't clarify. He liked the mystery. A moment of quiet followed, rain whispering against the glass, distant traffic murmuring below their tower. Her reflection wavered beside his foxes, barely visible under the fabric. Finally, she spoke softly. "Do people stare at me?" He glanced over, caught the insecurity behind the question. Sometimes her shoulders slumped. "But they stare because you look interesting," he added. "Not many people have something that sets them apart. You've got plenty." She toyed with her chopsticks, ears angled slightly backward. "Plenty of reasons to laugh, you mean?" "Sarah." His tone softened. "They don't laugh because you're weird. They laugh because they wish they had something that unique." "You don't understand," she whispered. "On my world, my ears are small, wrong shape. Everyone says they look human-made. I thought coming here would help, but it's worse." He didn't have an immediate answer for that. The silence stretched. Then he leaned over, tapping her hood lightly. "Then stop hiding them. Let people see what wrong shape looks like when it's actually beautiful." Her breath caught, eyes wide, stunned. "You," he chuckled before she could recover. "Relax. It's just a compliment. You can log it as another entry in Rhett's endless teasing if it helps." "I already have a folder," she mumbled. "I'll make sure it's full." She looked away quickly, trying to suppress a smile. The screen light reflected in her eyes, soft gold against amber. For once, she didn't pull her hood tighter. The next morning, Rhett woke to find her sitting cross-legged on the floor beside a potted plant, whispering to it in her native tongue. Her tail swayed slowly as she brushed dust off the leaves. He rubbed his eyes. "You talk to houseplants now." "They listen better than you do," she said without looking up. "Can't argue with that." He stepped closer, watching her work. The morning light poured through the window, striking her ears just enough to glint off the tiny ridges of soft fur. She froze when she noticed his stare. "What?" "Nothing. Just thinking how they catch the light." Her hands flew up, covering her ears. "Stop saying things like that." He raised his brows. "Like what? True things. Like that. You humans always say nice things when you're making fun." He chuckled, crouching down to her level. "You think I'm joking every time I call you beautiful, don't you?" Her ears lowered, tail curling protectively. "You don't mean it." "Maybe I do." She stared, unsure if she wanted to believe it. Then she scowled faintly. "You're insufferable." "Maybe," he said, standing again. "But at least I'm honest about it." She didn't reply. But as he left for work, she caught herself staring at her reflection in the darkened window. For a fleeting moment, she pushed her hood back. The morning light touched her ears again, warm and soft. For once, she didn't look away. By the end of that week, Red started noticing small changes around the apartment. The hood that used to hang on Sarah's shoulders all day now stayed on the back of a chair. Her ears, once hidden, began to peek out more often, twitching unconsciously when she thought no one was looking. He didn't say anything about it. He just made sure to glance at them now and then, let her catch him doing it, and grin. The routine had become comfortable in its chaos. Mismatched schedules, shared groceries, and the kind of banter that could only form between two people too different to make sense together. Sarah still tried to act composed, but Red had a way of poking holes in her calm. He did it on purpose. He enjoyed the way she puffed up when flustered. That afternoon the rain had cleared. Sunlight reflected off distant tower glass, streaking pale amber across the kitchen. Rhett was repairing the hollow projector again. It had been flickering all week. He had the back panel open, tools scattered across the counter like confetti from a failed party. Sarah hovered nearby, trying not to look interested. "You've been at that for hours, minutes," Red corrected. "I've only been electrocuted once today, which is an improvement." She tilted her head. "Why don't you just buy a new one? Because Flufftail." "That would make sense. And I like a challenge." Her tail twitched. "Don't call me that." He looked up. Grease smudged across his cheek. "Why not? It fits. Tail fluff. It's perfect." "It's embarrassing." He smirked. "Yeah, but it makes you laugh when you think I'm not watching." Sarah's mouth opened-closed, and then she turned sharply away, muttering something about how humans had no shame. Red laughed. "See, you just proved my point." Later, when he finally got the projector working, Sarah had fallen asleep on the couch, half buried in a blanket, tail curled around her. The flickering glow of the hollow lit her face, softening the usually cautious set of her features. He found himself just watching her. There was something oddly peaceful about the way her ears twitched even in sleep. Tiny reactions to sounds only she could hear. He reached forward, hesitated mid-air, then chuckled quietly at himself. "Yeah, real smooth rat," he whispered. "Let's not be the creep who pets his roommate in her sleep." He shut off the projector, dimmed the lights, and went to bed with that image lingering in his mind. The soft curve of her ears, the trust in her sleeping posture. The next day, she found him half asleep at the breakfast table, coffee in hand, hair a mess. "You stayed up late again," she said, ears perked, caught in deep thought. "About what?" He gave her a sideways glance. "You're snoring." "I don't snore," she snapped, ears flicking in outrage. He grinned. "You do this little squeaky sound like a hiccup crossed with a sneeze." Her cheeks burned. "That's not possible." "It's adorable," he said through his coffee. "Rhett?" He laughed so hard he nearly spilled the cup. Okay, I'll stop." But he didn't stop smiling. And she didn't stop glaring, though. It was the kind of glare that had a shy smile buried beneath it. Their days slipped into that pattern. Work, meals, banter, he teased. She protested. And somehow that became the heartbeat of their shared life. Still, Sarah's insecurities surfaced in small cracks. At the market, other species sometimes stared or whispered. Rhett noticed her ears lower, tail wrap around her leg. Every time he wanted to say something, to call them out. But he knew that pity wouldn't help. Instead, he leaned down and muttered loud enough for her to hear. "You know they're staring because you're better looking than them, right?" Her eyes widened. "Don't say things like that in public," he grinned. "Why? I'm just being factual. Humans are impossible," she muttered. But her tail flicked a little higher afterward. That evening she lingered near his workbench while he tinkered with a drone. The hum of its motor filled the silence between them. "Rhett," she began softly. He didn't look up. "Yeah, do you really mean it? The things you say." He paused, setting the wrench down slowly. "What things?" Her ears shifted nervously. "The compliments?" Rhett leaned back in his chair, expression unreadable. "Would I waste my time lying about that? I don't know. You joke about everything." He studied her face, the earnestness, the hesitation, and finally sighed. "Look, I joke because it makes you smile. But that doesn't mean I don't mean what I say." She fidgeted, ears angling sideways. "So when you said I was cute, I meant it." She blinked. "And when you said my ears are the best thing in this apartment?" He grinned. "Yeah, I meant that too." Her voice came out barely audible. "You're teasing again." "Maybe, Rhett." He chuckled, pushing away from the table and standing. "Tell you what, you figure out when I'm serious and I'll buy you dinner." She looked at him suspiciously. "That sounds like a trap." "Exactly." But later when she went to her room, she caught herself smiling in the mirror, her ears visible, uncovered. She tried to tell herself it didn't matter what a human thought. It didn't work. That night, as Red shut off the lights, he caught a glimpse of her reflection in the window. She was brushing her tail carefully, humming to herself, a soft Vulpine tune. Her hood hung forgotten on a chair. He stood quietly in the doorway for a few seconds before muttering. Finally, she turned startled. "Finally, what?" He grinned. "Finally seeing the real you." She blinked, uncertain. "You make it sound like that's a good thing." "It is." Her tail flicked nervously, but she didn't hide this time. She smiled, small and hesitant. "Good night, Rhett." "Good night, Sarah." He watched her close the door, the faint sound of her humming fading behind it, and realized something he didn't expect. He liked hearing her voice in his home. And maybe, just maybe, she was starting to believe she belonged there too. The following week was a blur of work shifts, half-burned dinners, and the constant hum of ship traffic drifting through their window. Red came home most nights covered in engine dust. Sarah had learned to recognize his footsteps before he reached the door. He'd always announce himself the same way, loud, teasing, confident. "Fox on deck, hide your snacks." Sarah would groan from wherever she was, usually half buried in a pile of date pads. "You are the most universalized human I have ever met." "Thanks, I try." Their banter filled the small apartment, bouncing off metal walls and thin laughter. But when Red disappeared into his room, she'd sit quietly with her thoughts, ears low, remembering the way others still stared when she ventured out. His words had made something flutter inside her, a fragile hope, but doubts still gnawed at the edges. One evening, a sudden blackout rolled through their district. The lights flickered twice, then cut out completely. Outside, the city dimmed to streaks of emergency red. Red groaned. "Great, another grid surge. I just fixed the fuse panel." Sarah's claws clicked softly on the floor as she moved closer. "It's too quiet." He glanced toward her silhouette. "You're not scared of the dark, are you?" "No, just the noises that come with it." He realized then how sensitive her hearing must be. The faint whine of magnetic locks, the groaning pipes several floors below. It wasn't silence to her. It was chaos. "Hey," he said gently, "come here. I can handle it," she murmured. But her tail betrayed her, twitching erratically. "Sure you can," he said. "But humor me." After a moment's hesitation, she stepped closer until she could just make out his outline. His hand brushed hers, warm, steady. "Better?" She hesitated, then nodded. "A little good," he said with a faint grin. "Now you won't have to file a noise complaint against the universe." A small laugh escaped her before she could stop it. The blackout lasted another 10 minutes, but neither moved apart. When the power returned, the lights revealed them standing close, closer than either had realized. Her ears angled forward, uncertain. His hand lingered at her side for a heartbeat longer than necessary. Then he stepped back, clearing his throat. "Well, crisis averted. Hero saves Fox from scary noises." "You're insufferable," she said, cheeks burning. "Maybe, but you're smiling again." She turned away quickly, but he caught the curve of her lips before she hit it. The next day, he came home early and found her sitting at the table with a cup of tea and a data pad, open to a language tutorial, English pronunciation. He leaned over her shoulder, reading the screen upside down. "Smirk, noun and verb." She nearly jumped out of her chair. "Don't sneak up on me," he grinned. "Studying my native language, huh?" "I keep hearing you say that word," she muttered. "Smirk. It doesn't translate well." He leaned close, voice low. "It's like a half smile that says, I know something you don't." She frowned thoughtfully, ears twitching. "Like when you tease me." "Exactly. It's the expression I wear right before you threaten to bite me." She swatted his arm. You make that sound like a game. It kind of is. Then I'm losing, she said softly. That caught him off guard. He crouched beside her, meeting her gaze. You're not losing, Sarah. You're learning the rules. She tilted her head. And what are the rules? Rule 1, never let the human win by flustering you. That's impossible. He laughed. Yeah, but admit it. You like trying. Her tail brushed his knee as she turned away, but there was laughter in her eyes. Later that night, rain returned, gentle this time, tapping the glass like quiet applause. Sarah sat on the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, watching light shimmer off the wet streets below. Red joined her, carrying 2 mugs of tea. You're supposed to be inside where it's warm, he said. It's warm enough out here, she replied. The rain sounds different from this high up. He leaned on the railing. Different how? It's softer. Not like home. She paused. Our storms were wild. You couldn't hear yourself think. I used to hide under my bed until it passed. Red sipped his drink. Sounds kinda nice, actually. Not when your fur acts like an antenna. He laughed, nearly spilling his tea. Okay, that's fair. They stood in companionable silence, the air cool and calm. Then Sarah said quietly, You make it easy to forget how people look at me. He glanced at her profile. Maybe that's because I look at you differently. Her ears flicked. Differently, he nodded. You hide those ears like they're a flaw, but when I see them, I think they fit you, like they're supposed to be there. Sarah looked away, eyes glinting under the dim city light. You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? Because I might start believing them. Red smiled. Good. Then I'm finally getting through. She shook her head, laughing under her breath. You really don't know when to stop. That's the charm. Her tail brushed against his leg again. An accident maybe, but neither moved away. By the weekend, something between them had shifted. The teasing still came easy, but now there was warmth behind it. Something unspoken, steady. When they cooked together, she didn't flinch if he leaned close. When they walked through the market, she held her head a little higher. He noticed everything and pretended not to. One evening, he found her trying to braid her hair in front of the mirror, struggling with the strands around her ears. Need a hand? He asked. She startled. I'm fine. Yeah, sure, because that's definitely a symmetrical braid. She glared at his reflection. You think you could do better? He stepped behind her, hands raised. Permission to assist? She hesitated, then nodded once. He worked slowly, careful not to brush her ears. The air felt charged, fragile. When he finished, he stepped back. There, functional and stylish. Sarah touched the braid, surprised. You actually can do this. Had a sister. He said she used to make me practice on her dolls. Sarah turned, smiling. You are full of strange skills. Wait till you see my pancake flipping technique. She laughed, shaking her head, and he caught a glimpse of something pure, unfiltered joy. He wanted to keep it there forever. As the night wore on, the easy quiet between them settled again. Rhett leaned against the counter, watching her tidy the kitchen. Hey Sarah, yes. You ever realize how far we've come from pretending to hate each other? I still pretend, she said without missing a beat. He grinned. Liar, she smiled back, tail swishing lazily. Maybe a little. The air felt lighter somehow. The city still roared outside. But inside their apartment it was just them. The confident human who teased too much, and the shy Vulpine, who finally began to smile when he did. The festival hit the city like a riot of light. Lanterns hovered in the skyways, glowing in every color of the spectrum. Vendors shouted in 6 languages. Scent drones drifted through the crowd, releasing bursts of spice and sugar. Rhett loved it. Sarah, on the other hand, clung to the edge of the plaza, tail twitching in nervous patterns. You sure about this? He asked. I promised I'd try, she said, pulling her hood a little lower. You said humans celebrate everything. I wanted to see what that meant. It means food on sticks and bad music, he said, grinning. Come on, I'll buy you something fried enough to regret later. They walked the stalls together, Red weaving through the crush with practiced ease. Sarah followed, eyes wide. She'd never seen so many species in one place, and never so many glances turned her way. At first, she ignored them. Then she heard the laughter, 2 reptilian traders whispering loud enough for it to sting. Pet fox following her owner. Rhett's head turned sharply. His easy grin disappeared. Hey, he called voice light, but sharp at the edges. You talking about my friend or my reflection? 'Cause either way you're wrong. The traitors froze, muttered something, and walked off. Sarah's ears flattened. You shouldn't have done that. I don't like bullies, he said. You just made it worse. For them, maybe. She shook her head. stepping away. You don't understand. You can joke all you want, but when you leave, they still look at me like I don't belong. Red followed. That's not on you, Sarah. It feels like it is. She snapped, turning on him. Every time someone stares, you make a joke, and I pretend it doesn't hurt, but it does. And when you say things like my ears are beautiful, it feels like you're mocking me too. He stopped short. Mocking you, Sarah. Why would a human ever think they're beautiful? Her voice cracked. You don't even have ears like mine. You can't know what it's like to wish they just disappear. Rhett's answer was quiet. You're right. I don't, but I know what it's like to want to disappear. She blinked at him. The crowd moved around them, oblivious. He exhaled. You think I tease because I don't care. Truth is, I tease because I do. You look down on yourself enough for both of us. Somebody's got to pull you back up. Her throat worked, but no words came. The festival lights shimmered off rain puddles around their feet. I'm sorry, he said finally. Didn't mean to embarrass you. She looked away, eyes shining faintly. I just need to be alone for a bit. Before he could reply, she slipped into the crowd, leaving him standing amid the swirl of colour and noise. An hour later, the festival had begun to thin. Red found her sitting on a bench at the edge of a quiet park, lanterns reflecting in the puddles. She didn't look up when he approached. He sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. For a long while, either spoke. Finally, he said, I didn't come to argue. Then why did you come to see if you'd let me apologize in person? She gave a small, humorless laugh. You don't give up easily, do you? Nope. Occupational hazard of being stubborn and human. That drew the faintest smile from her. He hesitated, then reached toward her hood. Can I? This time she didn't stop him. He used the fabric back, revealing the soft sweep of red fur catching the light. The city glow framed her face like sunset. They really are beautiful, you know, he said quietly. Not because they're perfect, because they're yours. Sarah's breath trembled, but she didn't move away. People stare, he added, because they've never seen something they don't understand. That's their problem. Mine is trying to convince you to see what I see. For the first time, she met his eyes without flinching. And what do you see? He smiled gently. Someone who makes the whole crowd disappear. The silence that followed was fragile, filled only by the soft patter of rain beginning again. She didn't answer right away, but her tail brushed lightly against his hand, deliberate this time. The rain thickened until the lantern reflections smeared into streaks of gold and violet across the pavement. Rhett didn't mind it. He'd been caught in worse storms. Sarah, though, shivered beside him, arms wrapped tightly around herself. The hood still hung down behind her neck, damp fur plastered to her temples. You'll get soaked, he said quietly. I don't care, she murmured. I just don't want to go back yet. He nodded. Then we'll sit. They did side by side, listening to the rhythmic hiss of water around them. The festival sounds had faded to distant echoes. Somewhere above, a shuttle passed, its engines low and steady like a heartbeat. After a while, Red said, You know, back when I was a kid, my father told me something stupid that stuck with me. She glanced over, wary but curious. What was it? He gave a lopsided grin. He said, If you can't fix something, you polish it until it shines. Sarah blinked. That's odd advice, maybe. But I think he meant that you don't throw something away just because it's different or broken. You make it yours. You make it worth keeping. Her eyes softened. And you think that applies to me? I think it applies to everyone, especially the ones who can't see their own shine. The words hung there between them. She lowered her gaze, raindrops glinting in her lashes. You always know how to say things that make me feel like I'm the one who doesn't understand humans. That's because humans are confusing on purpose. Despite the rain, she laughed. A small, quiet sound that still managed to fill the space between them. Rhett leaned forward slightly. elbows resting on his knees. You want to know something else? What? I think those ears of yours are the best thing about this city tonight. Her head snapped up. Red. Not joking, he said softly. Not teasing, just telling the truth. The silence that followed was heavy, almost sacred. She didn't seem to know what to do with the words. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her jacket, claws faintly visible. Finally, she whispered, "They're just ears." "No," he said. "They're yours. That's the difference." He lifted a hand, slow and deliberate, giving her plenty of time to stop him. His eyes met hers, steady, questioning. "Can I?" Sarah hesitated, heart racing, unsure what giving permission even meant. But something in his expression, open, patient, utterly unthreatening, made her nod. Rhett moved carefully, his fingers brushing a single strand of wet hair aside, before touching the edge of her left ear. The texture surprised him, fine and soft, with warmth under the fur. She flinched once, then went still. He said nothing, just traced along the curve, gently, smoothing rain from the delicate ridge. The motion was slow, reverent, like he was handling something precious. Sarah's eyes fluttered shut, and her breath came unevenly. It wasn't the touch itself that shook her. It was the absence of judgment in it. No mockery, no laughter, just calm, quiet care. Red smiled faintly, thumb following the subtle contour toward the tip. "Told you," he murmured. "Beautiful." "You're strange," she said, voice barely audible. "Takes one to know one." She gave a weak laugh, but it wavered. Her composure trembled under the weight of everything he wasn't saying. "You shouldn't," she began, but couldn't finish the sentence. "Shouldn't what be this kind?" He looked at her with an expression she'd never seen before, something between amusement and awe. Too late for that. He brushed back her other ear, carefully, untangling damp fur with his fingers, gentle as the falling rain. Her posture eased, her tail uncoiled, resting against his knee. "You know," he said quietly, "if the others saw you like this, they'd stop laughing." She blinked. "Why?" "Because they'd finally understand what I see." Her throat tightened. "And what is that?" He tilted his head. "Someone who doesn't need to hide anymore." She looked down at her hands, then back at him, struggling with the tide of emotion threatening to break. The rain had slowed to a mist now, the city's lights painting the park in fading hues. "You always know what to say," she whispered. "Maybe I just finally said the right thing." For a long moment they stayed like that, close, quiet, unguarded. His hand remained against her ear, fingers resting lightly in the fur, not claiming, not demanding, just there. The city hummed distantly around them. Sarah could feel her heartbeat syncing with his rhythm, calm and sure. When she opened her eyes again, she found him smiling at her with the kind of warmth she hadn't known existed outside of dreams. "You can stop running from yourself now," he said softly. "You already caught up." A tear slipped down her cheek, mingling with the last drops of rain. Red reached up and brushed it away, thumb gentle. "Hey, no crying, Fox. It's not crying," she said, voice trembling with a laugh. "It's rain." "Good cover story," he replied. She smiled through the tears. Or rain, whatever excuse she preferred, and leaned slightly closer. The lantern light behind them flickered once, then steadied, bathing the bench in gold. Either of them moved to break the moment. The noise of the city faded into nothing. There was only the rain, the light, and the quiet connection of two lives that had stopped pretending they were separate. Rhett's hand stayed against her ear, the warmth of his touch sinking through the damp fur until she forgot how to breathe properly. He didn't hurry. He moved with a patience that felt almost reverent, fingertips brushing in small, careful strokes that smoothed each line and ridge. Sarah's eyes drifted shut. The tension that had clung to her shoulders for months loosened thread. by thread until her body remembered what calm felt like. The noise of the city melted away. "You really don't mind them," she whispered. "Mind them?" He smiled faintly. "I'd miss them if they weren't there." She gave a shaky laugh. "You'd find something else to tease." "Not as good as this," he said. "Nothing else moves when you're happy." Her ears twitched automatically, proving his point. She groaned softly and pressed her hands over her face. "You notice everything." "Perk of being human," he teased. "We're observant when it matters." Her fingers lowered slowly, revealing eyes bright with conflicting emotions. "You're not supposed to say things that make me forget how to be embarrassed." "I thought that was progress." He resumed the gentle motion, smoothing the edge of her ear with his thumb. She leaned toward him without realizing, drawn by the steady rhythm. When he spoke again, his voice had lost its usual playful tone. "You've been carrying other people's words for too long, Sarah. Every insult, every look. You started believing them, but none of it was true." Her breath itched softly, but she stayed still. "They called you names because you were different. You believed it meant wrong. But different isn't wrong. It's rare." "And rare," he added, fingers gliding once more through the fur, "is worth noticing." Her throat tightened. "You can't just fix someone by saying nice things." "Rhett." He nodded. "I know, but I can remind you of what you forgot." She blinked up at him, lips parted. "What did I forget?" "That there's nothing wrong with being seen." For a moment, Ether spoke. Then she exhaled, trembling, and covered his hand with hers, keeping it where it was. The touch startled him more than he'd admit. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for seeing me." He swallowed hard, unsure what to do with the sudden sincerity. "Anytime." Sarah laughed softly, wiping at her face. "You make it sound easy." "It's easy when the view's this good." She tried to scowl at him, failed completely, and ended up smiling. "You're terrible." "Accurate but terrible," he said. "And you're smiling again, so I'll call it a win." Her tail brushed against his leg, this time deliberate and slow. "You really don't stop." "Not when it matters," he murmured. The last of the rain faded, leaving only the hush of distant engines and the soft hum of lights returning across the city. Rhett's fingers lingered once more, a final pass through her hair and the fur beneath, before resting gently on her shoulder. "Come on," he said quietly. "Let's get out of the rain." Sarah hesitated, then nodded. When she stood, he reached to adjust her hood, but she stopped him halfway. "Leave it down," she said. He smiled. "Now we're talking." They walked back toward the apartment together, close enough that their steps matched. The night air cool, but no longer cold. The glow of the festival still shimmered behind them, but neither looked back. For the first time since she'd left her home world, Sarah didn't worry about who might be watching. Back at the apartment, the air felt different, still and warm, filled with the quiet that follows something real. Sarah slipped inside first, bare feet silent on the floor. Red closed the door behind them and leaned against it for a second, taking in the sight of her. The hood was still down. Her ears were damp, bits of fur sticking in uneven tufts. She looked both fragile and strong, like someone halfway between tears and laughter. He grabbed a towel from the rack and walked over. "Sit, you'll catch a cold." "Vulpints don't get colds," she said, though she obeyed, sitting at the edge of the couch. "Good thing, because I'm terrible at nursing." He crouched in front of her and began blotting the water from her hair. She sat rigidly at first, but his calm steadiness wore down her tension until she stopped resisting. When he reached her ears again, she hesitated. "You don't have to." "I know," he smiled, "but I want to." The towel moved slowly, drying the fur with gentle circles. Then, without thinking, his fingers replaced the fabric, tracing familiar paths. Sarah exhaled softly, the tension in her shoulders dissolving. "You make it hard to be angry with you," she murmured. "Occupational hazard," he said. "Charming in the job description." She laughed low and sincere. The sound filled the space between them more than words ever could. When he finished, he dropped the towel aside and rested his hands on his knees. "There," he said. "Good as new." Sarah tilted her head, ears flicking slightly as if testing the air. "You're smiling again." "Can't help it. You look proud of them now." Her gaze lowered, then lifted again with a faint grin. "Maybe I am." "That's dangerous," he teased. "You might start liking yourself." "Would that bother you?" "Not at all. Confidence looks good on you." The silence that followed was easy, comfortable. She moved to stand but stopped halfway, caught by something in his expression. The humor had softened into something deeper, steadier. "What?" she asked quietly. "Just realizing how quiet it feels when you're not apologizing for existing," he said. "It suits you." Her lips parted slightly. You say things like that so casually. That's because I mean them. She sat back down closer this time. Her tail brushed the couch cushion, curling slightly toward him. Do you ever get tired of pretending everything's a joke? He thought about it for a moment. Maybe, but it's easier than admitting how much I care sometimes. That disarmed her more than any flirtation ever could. You care? He met her gaze more than I planned to. She blinked rapidly, tail flicking once, uncertain how to respond. Then she smiled, small but genuine. You're terrible at hiding it. Guess we both stopped hiding tonight. She reached up then, almost timidly, and touched his cheek. Her fingertips brushed the faint smudge of rain still clinging to his skin. Thank you, she said softly, for not giving up on me. He covered her hand with his. Couldn't even if I tried. Her voice was barely a whisper. That sounds like a promise. Maybe it is. The room felt smaller, the world outside irrelevant. She leaned forward until her forehead rested lightly against his chest. His arms rose instinctively, one hand cradling the back of her head, careful not to disturb her ears. Mather spoke. They didn't need to. The rhythm of their breathing filled the space, two steady patterns finding the same pace. For once, there was no teasing, no hiding behind humor, just a quiet understanding that something fragile and extraordinary had found a home between them. After a long time, Sarah whispered, It's strange. What is? Feeling seen and not wanting to disappear, he smiled against her hair. Then I did something right, she chuckled softly. You did too much right. Don't tell anyone. It'll ruin my reputation. Her laughter lingered as the lights dimmed, and she finally let herself rest against him fully, tail curling contentedly around them both. Outside, the city breathed in neon and distant thunder, but in their small corner of it, peace settled quietly and stayed. Morning drifted in through the blinds, pale light brushing over the cluttered living room. Rhett woke first, stiff from the couch but unwilling to move. Sarah had fallen asleep against him sometime during the night, head tucked beneath his chin, tail draped lazily over his lap. He stayed there, studying the small details, the rise and fall of her breathing, the way her ears twitched slightly when the city stirred outside. It felt like a scene he shouldn't disturb. Eventually she stirred. Her eyes opened halfway, unfocused. You didn't move all night, she mumbled. Didn't want to wake you, he said. You were drooling on my shirt. Her head shot up mortified. I was not. Pretty sure you owe me a laundry token. She caught the smirk tugging at his mouth and realized he was joking again. You're impossible. He stretched, pretending to consider it. Accurate assessment. The laughter that followed eased any leftover awkwardness. She sat beside him, brushing her hair from her face, then glanced toward the window. It's still raining. Welcome to the city, he said. The weather's as moody as I am. She smiled faintly, gazed soft. You don't seem moody today. That's because I'm looking at someone who finally left her hood off. Her ears angled slightly, self-conscious, but she didn't hide them. It feels strange, she admitted. Like everyone can see me now. They could always see you, he said. Now you're letting them. That earned a quiet laugh. You say these things like it's easy. It's not, he said, standing to grab 2 cups of coffee. But it gets easier when you stop fighting yourself. Sarah accepted her cup, wrapping her hands around the warmth. The first sip made her wrinkle her nose. How do humans drink this without grimacing? Practice, he said. And lack of good taste. She took another sip anyway. I'm beginning to think you survive on humor alone, he grinned. Humor and caffeine keeps the charm running. Later, they walked down to the street for groceries. The rain had faded to a drizzle, neon reflections rippling in puddles along the pavement. People bustled past, human, vulpine, reptilian, each wrapped in their own world. For the first time, Sarah didn't reach for her hood. Her ears stood free, catching the breeze. A few onlookers glanced her way, but she didn't shrink back. Rhett walked beside her, hands in his pockets, an easy grin on his face. See? He said. Nobody exploded. Not yet, she said. Give it time, he chuckled. You'll be fine. Worst case, I'll scare off anyone rude. With what? Your charm, exactly. Her tail flicked lightly. Then we're doomed. He laughed and she couldn't help but join in. They spent the morning wandering through market aisles, arguing over fruit quality and snack choices. Red teased. Sarah countered with sarcastic precision. Somewhere between the spice stand and the checkout line, she realized something subtle. People weren't staring anymore, or if they were, she didn't care. By the time they returned home, the sky had cleared. The window was open, letting the scent of wet metal and street flowers drift inside. Red dropped the bags on the counter and leaned back. You're getting good at this whole existing among humans thing. Sarah unpacked a bundle of noodles and glanced over. Maybe I had a good teacher. Me? He placed a hand dramatically over his heart. You wound me, Sarah. I thought I was a terrible influence. You are, she said, smirking. But somehow it worked. He chuckled. Guess chaos builds character. She shook her head, but the affection in her eyes gave her away. You never change, do you? Wouldn't dream of it. The quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was comfortable, the kind that settled after long laughter and late nights. Sarah moved closer, reaching up to adjust his collar without thinking. You missed a button, she said. Pretty sure you added one just to tell me that. Her smile lingered. You make life loud, Rhett. But maybe that's what I needed. He looked down at her, voice softer. And you make it worth turning the volume down sometimes. Her ears lifted slightly. That's your version of poetry. Work in progress, he said. She laughed, setting the last of the groceries away. Then keep practicing, only if you stick around to critique it. Deal. Outside, sunlight pushed through the thinning clouds, glinting off the window glass. Inside, laughter echoed faintly as the world went on. Two mismatched souls, finally comfortable enough to let it. The evening drifted in slow and steady, painting the apartment in amber light. The city outside pulsed with its usual rhythm. Sky cars whispering past, vendors closing their stalls, the far-off hum of advertisements blending into a metallic lullaby. Inside, everything felt still. Sarah sat curled in the armchair by the window, a book balanced in her lap. She was half reading, half listening to the faint music drifting from Rhett's old speaker on the counter. He was stretched out on the couch pretending to nap, one arm covering his eyes. You're terrible at sleeping, she said without looking up. I'm thinking, he replied. That's worse. He peeked through his arm. You wound me, Fox. She smiled, turning a page. Admit it. You're just waiting for me to say something clever so you can steal it. Always. He grinned, closing his eyes again. Keeps me sharp. The light dimmed by degrees as the sun fell behind the towers. When the music faded into static, either moved to restart it, the silence between them had changed. It wasn't awkward anymore. It was shared, familiar, warm. Sarah marked her page and glanced toward him. You ever wonder what people think when they see us? Red shifted. You mean when they're not too busy minding their own business? Yes, she said, smiling faintly. Exactly. Then I figure they think we're two people with great taste in furniture and questionable hygiene. She rolled her eyes. Be serious. He lowered his arm, meeting her gaze. All right. They probably wonder how a quiet, brilliant vulpine ended up living with a disaster like me. Her tail flicked once. You forgot charming. Did I? He chuckled, sitting up. Then you'll have to remind me sometimes. The words came out easy, but they hung in the air longer than either expected. Sarah looked down at her hands, tracing invisible lines across the book's cover. Back home, she said softly. I used to think I'd spend my whole life hiding. My ears, my voice, my laugh, anything that drew attention. When I left, I told myself it would be different. But I kept hiding anyway. Rhett leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Until now. Until you, she said quietly. The confession hung there, fragile as glass. Rhett didn't move for a moment, just studied her expression. Her eyes were steady, not defiant, just honest. He smiled. You make it sound like I did something special. You did, she said simply. You saw me. Everyone else looked at me. He exhaled slowly, scratching the back of his neck. That might be the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. It's true. He laughed once softly. Guess we're both better at this than we thought. Sarah tilted her head. At what? Being alive, he said. That earned him a smile, the kind that reached her eyes. Later, the rain started again, gentle this time, tapping the glass like a memory. Rhett stood and crossed to the kitchen, pouring 2 mugs of tea. He handed one to her and nodded toward the balcony. Come on, best view in the block. Sarah followed him outside. The air was cool, filled with the scent of wet metal and city air. Lights stretched in every direction, a maze of motion and color. They leaned on the railing side by side, the sound of rain wrapping around them. Red sipped his tea. Remember when you used to call me insufferable every day? I still do, she said. But you smile when you say it now. Her tail brushed lightly against his leg. Don't get used to it. Too late. They stood like that for a while, comfortable in the quiet. Somewhere below, a transport thrummed by its engines, reflecting red light across her hair. He turned his head slightly, catching her profile. The ears lifted. The calm certainty that had replaced all the old fear. You know, he said, I used to think humans were good at fixing things. Turns out sometimes we're better at just holding them steady until they remember how to stand. Sarah's gaze softened. And you think that's what you did? I think it's what we did for each other. Her hand found his fingers light but deliberate. You really don't stop, do you? He smiled. Not my best trait, but it gets results. She squeezed his hand gently. It does. The sky darkened fully, the rain slowing to a mist. She turned to face him fully, ears tilting forward. You were right. You know about what? My ears, she said with a small laugh. They are beautiful. He grinned. Told you. Don't get smug. Too late again. They both laughed softly, the sound merging with the distant hum of the city. Hours later, the apartment was quiet except for the soft hiss of the rain outside. Sarah sat at the table with her data pad, writing something in her own language. Smooth curling letters that glowed faintly blue. Red dozed nearby, one arm draped over his eyes again. When she finished, she looked up and whispered, You made me feel seen, human. I don't think I can ever forget that. He stirred, half awake. Good, wouldn't want you to. Sarah smiled, closing the pad. She crossed to the couch, kneeling beside him. You hear everything, don't you? Selective hearing, he murmured. I only catch the nice parts. She brushed a hand through his hair, voice soft. Then hear this. Thank you. He opened one eye, a lazy grin forming. You're welcome, Fox. She laughed quietly and settled on the floor beside him, tail curling around her legs. Outside, the city lights shimmered across the wet streets, painting the room in a soft glow. Tomorrow, Brett muttered, eyes drifting shut again. We find breakfast that doesn't involve noodles. Good luck, she said. You'll need it. Story of my life. She smiled, leaning her head against the side of the couch. The sound of rain and his breathing were together, steady and familiar. Somewhere beyond the window, the first light of dawn began to break. Sarah didn't move. She didn't hide her ears. And in that quiet, human and vulpine shared a simple, unspoken truth. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do in a universe full of noise is let someone love you as you are. If you enjoyed this story, hit subscribe and join us for more tales of love, laughter, and the strength that makes humanity shine.